Come to DSW for the shoes, stay for the fun. Because, let's be honest, if shoe shopping isn't fun, are you even doing it right? So go ahead, try something new. Try something different. Good different. Try something that feels like you. You know, the real you. And then definitely brag about it later. Because at DSW, you've got unlimited freedom to play. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or at DSW.com. Let us surprise you.
Going to pull back the curtain on episode number 136 right out of the gate. We've already recorded our interview segment and our segment with Benjamin Hill this week, and I got to tell you, phenomenal, both of them. I got to tell you. So
that's what we call in the industry a tease.
So I'm just worried that I'm going to screw up 3 strikes, and I feel like I should probably keep it brief for that reason.
Yeah, no, we're going to do that anyways because we went long with our guest and with Ben,
but
which is fine.
Deservedly so. Yeah, exactly, which we don't generally get to say recording a podcast on November 29th, so that's pretty cool. So with that, welcome inside episode number 136 of the Show Before the Show podcast from MILB.com. My name is Tyler Mon. He is Sam Dykstra in New York City. We are into the full-on minor league offseason. The AFL is behind us. We've got some off-season topics to get to today, and then we're going to be talking with a very interesting prospect who kind of dovetails. Do you dovetail into or out of? I don't know. One of our topics, which we'll get to, is strike 3. But before we get to all of that, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you find us, you can catch the Show Before the Show podcast on Apple Podcasts, at Google Play, on the Stitcher app, and wherever else you find your podcasts. We're also at MILB.com/podcast, where you can find past episodes and get in touch with the show. Podcast at MILB.com. Sam's on Twitter, Sam Dykstra, MILB. I am at Tyler Mon. And give us a rating and a review and a subscription, and we would be ever so grateful to keep our perfect 5-star rating on the old iTunes machine. And, yeah, let's dive in. Coming up here in just a little bit, Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim prospect Michael Hermosillo will join the show, and we'll talk about one of the reasons why, aside from the fact that Michael's an extremely insightful, intelligent, fun dude to talk to, and a really good prospect, but a reason why he is especially noteworthy as of this week, coming up here in a little bit. But we're going to get started with 3 strikes this week, with 2 strikes coming from a question submitted to us on Twitter from one of our most loyal of listeners, the John T. John T., who has followed us on Twitter and listened to the show for a long, long time. John submitted this one, and it was a really, really good question, 2-part question. So we're going to use it for parts 1 and 2, strikes 1 and 2 this week. Here is his quote. I'd like to hear you guys tell us on the podcast about your top prospect busts, but not due to injury, and your best non-prospect surprises, quote, I never thought he'd be this good types of guys. So we're going to start on the bust side. And unfortunately, it seemed like it was a lot easier to think of guys on the bust side than it was guys that kind of came out of nowhere. But Sam, what did you think of first for this question?
Yeah, I was going back. So as some of you might know, as some of you might not know, I started covering the minors exclusively in 2012. And I was trying to think of people around that age who would probably be major league regulars right now. We certainly thought they might be, and that didn't quite, or haven't quite worked out. I came up with some names, some of which I'm sure Tyler's going to talk about, and I'll let him get to those. One of the things that kind of stood out to me was that the 2013 draft and the 2014 draft, some of the top names in those drafts just have not shaked out the way we thought, specifically Mark Appel, and I'll let Tyler talk more about him in a little bit. Cole Stewart, Trey Ball, a lot of those guys were not protected in the not protected from this year's Rule 5 draft. They were eligible for it, not added to the 40-man roster, or in Appel's case, ended up being DFA'd, taken off the 40-man roster of the Phillies. And most of these guys are arms, and trying to project pitching can be tough, so I get that. 2014, kind of similar. Obviously, Brady Aiken didn't sign with the Astros that year, ended up going to the Indians a year later, and has experienced all sorts of elbow issues and control issues. But for being a guy who was 1-1, his career has not gone nearly the way he would have liked. And then the second pick that year, Tyler Kolek, went to the Marlins. He's also undergone Tommy John surgery. So two really promising pitchers in the top of that draft haven't worked out. But the guy who I would probably pick as the biggest bust since I've really covered baseball was probably Jesus Montero, who was kind of Gary Sanchez before Gary Sanchez. In fact, everybody was worried Gary Sanchez was going to turn into the next Jesus Montero. Coming up in the Yankee system, maybe part of that is Yankees hype. Who knows? But this was a guy who consistently would hit, around 300, take his walks, show good power, be a catcher. As he kind of progressed, was he going to stick at catcher? Was he going to stick at or move to first base? What was that going to be like? Eventually gets moved to the Mariners. In a short sample for the Yankees before that, OPS is 996. Peak prospect, the whole thing. Hit 20 plus home runs in 2010 at AAA Scranton. And then we never really heard too much from him. This year, he played 13 games at AAA Norfolk, hit 143 with a 340 OPS, end up being cut, goes to the Mexican League. As of right now, I think he's playing in Venezuela, Winter League, putting up better numbers there again. But again, he's a man without a position. He's 28 years old, right-handed slugger. For being what we thought would be the game's next big slugger and the game's next big hitting catcher, just never really put it all together. And, as much as we like to think if you can produce at AAA as young as he was, the earlier part of this decade, then you are going to produce at the major league level. His is a cautionary tale that that's not always going to happen. And questions about athleticism can get really exposed in the majors. And then he's obviously had some other problems in the Mariners system involving suspensions and altercations with coaches and scouts and all that kind of stuff. So Montero might be the biggest bust for somebody who seemed like a tacked on major league regular to deflate as quickly as he has. He's kind of the one that stuck out in my mind.
Yeah, and, this is such a difficult conversation because we've seen so many of these guys go through so much stuff that you start to pull for him. I mean, Jesus Montero, the issue a few years ago where he had the altercation during a game with a scout who worked for the Mariners who called him fat as he was running off the field. And then Montero the next year shows up to spring training, had lost something like 30 pounds, looked like he was in some of the best physical shape he had ever been in, the old cliche, best shape of his life thing for spring training, but really seemed contrite, like he wanted to make it work. It just hasn't been there for him. And it's never easy to talk about guys in this context. And the guy who we actually both had on our list for this conversation is a guy who we really like, who's been really enjoyable to talk to every time we've interviewed him. He was, I believe, our first guest on the Minor League Baseball podcast as far as players go, and that's Mark Appel, who was the first overall selection in the 2013 draft. That was when he was a senior coming out of Stanford. The year prior to that, he was the 8th overall pick in the 2012 draft, went to the Pittsburgh Pirates when he was a junior. I remember I was working in the Pirates organization at that time. I was with AA Altoona, and we kind of figured if this dude signs, there's a chance we see him here before the end of the year. Chooses not to sign, goes back to Stanford, throws extraordinarily well his senior year, gets taken with the first overall selection, and just ever since then, it's been one head-scratching result after another for whatever reason with Mark Appel. He goes out first season, pretty decent returns, makes 10 starts between short season Class A Tri-City and Class A Quad Cities, goes out, puts up a combined 3.79 ERA. Then in 2014, his first full season, he gets thrown into the California League and puts up a 9.74 ERA in 12 outings, and his innings were heavily managed. He was kept on a very, very strict pitch count. Just never could put it together. He had one or two starts where it looked like, okay, it's finally starting to click. And then he'd go out the next time and he'd give up 7 runs in an inning and a third or something like that. And really left you wondering, what is the deal here? The Astros, to their credit, decided, all right, it's not working in Lancaster. Let's see what he can do bumped up a notch. So he goes up to Corpus Christi at the end of the season, makes 7 appearances up there, 3.69 ERA. Things seem to be sort of coming back into control. Strikes out 38, only walks 13. The following season, makes it through AA, makes it to AAA. Numbers still a little bit shaky, and then the Astros decide after 2015 that they're going to move on from the Mark Appel project. So he gets traded. The Astros bring in Ken Giles, who obviously contributes to a team that goes on to win the World Series in 2017, and it looks like maybe this is the type of guy who was a prime candidate for a change of scenery. One of those types of guys you hear about in sports that's got to work out that way for Mark Appel. Never really happened that way with the Phillies organization either. In 2016, he was shut down for the season in late June. He had to have bone spurs removed from his right elbow. Even in those outings in 2016, not overly impressive. He struck out 34, but he walked 20 and 38 in the third. He had an ERA of about 4.5. And then this year, again, just kind of turns into a ghost. An ERA of over 5.25, 17 starts for Lehigh Valley. He ended up making a couple of appearances in the rookie-level Gulf Coast League. He wasn't healthy all season. The thing that's so baffling about Mark Appel, though, is he has slid from being, a top 5 prospect in baseball to a top 10 prospect in an organization to now being unranked entirely in the Philly system. He's 26 years old, and his stuff, by all accounts, his pure stuff still looks outstanding. But for whatever reason, command sometimes has become an issue. This season, it was definitely a pronounced issue combined between the GCL and Lehigh Valley. He walked 54 against 60 strikeouts and 84 innings. But he's just hittable. Opponents have been able to figure him out for whatever reason. And so many different people have tried so many different things now with Mark Appel. You kind of wonder if it's just death by 1,000 paper cuts, a guy who's been drowned in try this, fix it this way, do it this way, whatever, and just hasn't been able to put it together. He's still young, young-ish. I mean, the clock is certainly down to its final moments as far as being somebody that you think could maybe be a long-time contributor, certainly in a starting capacity. But, maybe now do the Phillies take a look at what he can do in a bullpen role? Do they look at, just an alternate type of route to get him to the major leagues? But just so confounding because everything was there for Mark Appel. The stuff, he's 6'5", 220. He's the type of guy, personality-wise, he's a leader. He's somebody that you love having in the clubhouse. And for whatever reason, it just has never come together for him.
Yeah, the really striking thing about Appel is, he was DFA'd and nobody traded for him. So he's put on waivers and nobody claimed him.
Right.
And now he's eligible for the Rule 5 draft, but any team could have just claimed him for their 40-man roster. Nobody's probably going to take him in the Rule 5 draft, where if they take him, they have to keep him on the major league roster, never mind just the 40-man.
Right.
So he goes from a situation a couple of years ago where, only a handful of teams could take him, and then the Astros decided nobody else, it was just going to be us, is going to get a shot at him, to now everybody had a shot at him and everybody said no. So, pitching can, he's had his fair share of injuries as well. Try to come back from that. I think a part of the problem is that he's just not as deceptive. The ball comes out of his hand great, and it looks great if you're just looking at the ball, but a lot of guys can kind of follow his pitches a little bit easier. And, when you're going to the upper levels of the minors, when they can do that, when you're not deceptive in any manner, they can either hit you hard or they can know when it's going to be a ball or a strike or whatever. So, we're always going to be following him just because he has that number 1 overall pick tag on him. But, a lot has come off his star the last couple of years.
Strike 2 this week, Sam, is kind of the antithesis of that. And, as we phrased it from John a moment ago, who was somebody that wasn't really top prospect status, maybe kind of a lesser known prospect, or somebody who was just really off the prospect map at all, who's turned into a star that you just did not see coming?
Yeah, and this is a real recent development, and a guy we have not talked about in a long time, especially on this podcast, but just in terms of being a prospect. I'll get some of the names you might be screaming into your podcast device out of the way now. Jose Altuve, becomes American League MVP this year, was signed for $15,000. Became a legit prospect during his time in the Astros system, hit everywhere he went, but, signing for $15,000, that was peanuts in that market. It's still peanuts now. Paul Goldschmidt, NL MVP finalist this year. Everybody kind of questioned, yeah, he's hitting well now in the minors, but what happens when he hits the majors? Is this ever going to carry over? It did for him, which makes you think about first base prospects. We often say the offensive threshold is even higher, but what does it say when a guy keeps hitting that threshold everywhere he goes? Rhys Hoskins kind of fits into that, and I think you saw the market kind of correct for Hoskins this past year. We kept asking those questions about him, and then he finally he kept answering them, so you saw him become a top prospect before he graduated. Josh Donaldson was a catcher in the A system, became one of the best third basemen, if not the best third baseman for a while there. Mookie Betts, I think, is just intriguing again from my perspective of where I started to where I am now. He was a 5th-round pick of the Red Sox in 2011. Started out 2012 at Class A short season Lowell, where I don't think he hit any home runs that year, was a speed demon for that level. And showed some good plate discipline, but again, was a second baseman. Did not look like he was going to become a Gold Glove right fielder by any means at that point. And he's certainly grown into that now. But the guy I want to talk about here for my pick is Tommy Pham, which kind of goes differently from all those other guys I just mentioned. They kind of became prospects, and you could see the progression at least coming. With Pham, his progression was, he was a 16th round pick back in 2006. So we're talking a long time ago. He's now 29 years old. And what he eventually became was kind of like a quad A player. In 2013 is when he made AAA Memphis the first time. He was there in 2014. He was there in 2015. He was there in 2016, and he was there this year as well. And put up always pretty good numbers at AAA Memphis. Always being, a WRC plus above 100, which makes him above average hitter. Again, going to reach base a ton, all that kind of stuff. But whenever he got called up to the Cardinals, just wasn't putting it together. And I remember there was some social media controversy this year. Either he liked or favorited or liked or retweeted somebody who's saying, why is so-and-so in the Cardinals outfield and Tommy Pham isn't? And I remember just kind of shrugging and being like, dude, in 2016, you hit 226 with a 324 OBP, 440 slugging in 78 games. Like, if you had your chance to prove yourself, this is not a new development that, you're not looking like you're going to be a major contributor to a team that's trying to, win or at least compete in a competitive NL Central. What he did this year is just fascinating to me. He hit 306, 411, 520, 23 home runs, 25 stolen bases in 128 games. Again, 25 games in Memphis sprinkled in there. Did not perform as well at Memphis as he did at St. Louis. He ended up being, according to Fangraphs, worth 5.9 WAR, which is definitely all-star territory. It's almost superstar territory. So I'm fascinated to see what happens with him going forward. But guys who look like quad A players, riding the shuttle back and forth, don't automatically have things click like they did for Tommy Pham. So he was a guy I put in a box just saying, like, okay, every once in a while he might pop up in a box score that I'm following here in the minors, but he's no longer a prospect. He's not going to be somebody I have to worry about. And he just exploded on the scene this year, became one of the best power/speed options in the game, which is great. And I would love to see somebody try to mimic it, but it's not something you see very often at all. Yeah,
these ones are so funny because you look back on a certain amount of careers of guys that you just, the example that comes to mind for me in terms of somebody that I was aware of and had heard about and now is so omnipresent across Major League Baseball, but I never really covered personally, was Kenley Jansen. I remember when I was in Myrtle Beach in 2010 as the radio guy, we hosted the California-Carolina League All-Star Game, and I remember hearing about Kenley Jansen that season when he was with Rancho Cucamonga. That was only his second year, or actually when he was with Inland Empire. They were still in Inland Empire at that point, and that was only his second year as a pitcher. He had started in 2009 pitching for Inland Empire. Of course, Kenley Jansen was a catcher 2005, and the Dodgers signed him, et cetera, and then blows up, and he's in the big leagues by 2011. Now he's the best closer in baseball. But I never really saw him play in the minors, didn't know a ton about him until he was in the majors. The guy who I always think about as somebody that I remember covering and seeing who's blown up into something that I don't think many people expected of him is Salvador Perez. And Sal Perez was always a liked prospect in the Kansas City Royals organization, but in that system, he was kind of back end of the teens, top end of the 20s in prospect ranking, that 2009, 2010, 2011 range. And then all of a sudden, 2011, he makes it into the major leagues. Now, since 2013, he's made 5 straight All-Star games. He's won 4 Gold Gloves. He was a Silver Slugger in 2016. I remember seeing him in Wilmington in 2010, and he was kind of the unanimous selection as the starting catcher for the Carolina League in that All-Star game in 2010. He was just so head and shoulders above everybody else. And that system at the time had Will Myers in it. And you remember looking back on that Royals organization, that was when Moustakas was coming up and Hosmer was coming up, and they were churning out all of this talent. And Salvador Perez just kind of got lost in that shuffle, and it wasn't because he wasn't deserving of it. They just had so many other guys in the spotlight that I think he was kind of forgotten. That year with Wilmington, he played in 99 games. He OPS 732, but, I think he threw out something like 63% of base stealers and was just so far and away better than every other catcher it seemed like we saw, that he's always the one that I look at and think, yeah, I think we could have seen this coming, and yet at the time, nobody would have pegged it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you need those, to become the World Series contenders that the Royals were. As many great prospects that they had in that system, you need a couple other ones who are going to go from, kind of also-rans or roster filler. Not that I'm saying Perez was that, but you need other guys who are going to become breakout stars. And, Salvador Perez feels like you can always kind of pencil him in for at least AL All-Star consideration, the way things have gone the last couple of years.
And it shows you what value the Royals organization put on him, the fact that they were comfortable with dealing somebody like Will Myers away when it looked like Will Myers was certainly the catcher of the future. Maybe he was going to be a first baseman. Maybe he was going to play in the outfield. But then at the end of 2012, they're content to send him out, and Salvador Perez becomes the guy, and ever since then has shown why for the Kansas City Royals. So it's fun. This is a really fun topic to dive into because there's so many guys who could be in this conversation and be on these lists.
Yeah, and please reach out with whoever you guys would have considered as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we're happy to reach. We could do a series of podcasts on this.
Yeah,
really. I remember batting around an idea of, doing a series on busts, and those just aren't fun to write. So I think I kind of scuttled it. But yeah, I mean, we could keep going on. And if there's somebody you think we forgot or somebody you want to make the case for the more fun category of a non-prospect turned to a star, please let us know.
And you talk about, how systems need those guys, the guys who supplement your top prospects and turn into prospects themselves. We'll talk to one of those guys coming up here in just a little bit, Michael Hermosillo of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And the reason why we're having Michael on the podcast this week is our topic for Strike 3. Back on Monday, not this past Monday, but the Monday before, was Major League Baseball's deadline to add eligible players to the Big League 40-man rosters of all 30 Major League teams to protect those players from this year's Rule 5 draft. That deadline was last Monday, the 20th. Was it the 20th? Yeah, the 20th. I'm not good with dates. At 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we saw a ton of big names added. Michael Hermosillo was one of 4 guys that the Angels added, but a lot of really, really big names that were added to 40-man rosters across the big leagues.
Yeah, some of the names all of you will certainly recognize: Gleyber Torres, Eloy Jimenez, Brent Honeywell, Austin Meadows, Tyler O'Neill, Jake Bowers, Steven Gonzalez in the Twins organization. Some of these are usually pretty easy, and it flabbergasts us in terms of why they don't announce these guys earlier. I know, so the deadline was on Monday to name guys to the 40-man roster and protect them. And we were talking about how should we prepare the weekend staff to cover, let's say Gleyber Torres gets added on Sunday. What should we do in that situation? And it just never comes to pass. Teams are always trying to organize deals. You never know what's going to happen. The last second tweaks. I know the Yankees in particular had a very stacked group of Rule 5 eligible players. You're trying to trade them away for non-Rule 5 eligible players. How does that affect things? You don't want to announce something too early, because if you announce it, it is official, and therefore, what it happens if you make a trade and all of a sudden you have to fill that 40-man spot all over again. So teams really do keep all their options open, which I'm sure makes some players sweat a little bit more. I think the Rays in particular announced super late, and they had some slam dunk picks. Honeywell and Bowers, like I mentioned, Yanni Chirinos, who was twice named IL Pitcher of the Week, and had a 0.97 WHIP this year. He was added. Justin Williams was added. Ryan Yarbrough was added. Just some slam dunk things, but it takes a while to announce it. Again, because of all those deals that could happen. So no real big surprises. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I can't believe X wasn't protected. He's definitely going to go in the Rule 5 draft. Nobody really in that scenario. We'll talk more about the Rule 5 draft as we get closer to that. We'll have a kind of a full preview, and I'll be there again for the Rule 5 draft this year, that Thursday. So we'll have a full breakdown after it happens as well. But if you were really worried about a top 100 prospects in your system being protected, don't worry, it's happened.
Don't worry, it's happened. It's an exciting time of the year.
Is that part of the merch we should sell?
Yeah.
I think that's a slogan we can definitely use.
Don't worry, it's happened T-shirt for the subsection of fans that are really into the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah, and one thing we should also really just highlight that I should have done just now, what being added to the 40-man means. You'll hear Hermosillo talk about this shortly, but this is a big part of people's careers. Like, as much as I just said, like, oh yeah, it happened, it's fine.
Yeah.
No huge surprises this year. This means that they are officially on a major league roster.
Yeah, this is huge for those guys.
The 25-man roster does not exist in November, December. It doesn't exist until opening day, really. So for right now, they are major leaguers until somebody says otherwise, until they get sent down to minor league camp. And that's a big part of these guys' careers. No matter where you start, you have this date circled of when are you becoming Rule 5 eligible. What will that mean at that point? Are you going to be able to prove yourself to the organization that knows you best that you were worthy of one of these 40 spots? So, even for somebody like Eloy Jimenez or Gleyber Torres, who, top 5 overall prospect in baseball, you better protect them. Otherwise, there'll be a race to the door to take them in the Rule 5. It still means something to them, and this is a big moment for them.
So that is strike 3 for this week's edition of Three Strikes. And coming up here in just a moment, we'll head to the Angels organization and talk with the guy who got to experience that phone call. We'll hear from Michael Hermosillo about that, about his road to really top prospect status in the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim organization and what it took to get there. A guy who was a former 2-sport athlete, was committed to play college football at the University of Illinois, and instead now finds himself knocking on the door of the major leagues. Michael Hermosillo joins episode number 136 of the Show Before the Show podcast, coming up next. For a minor league system to build itself, or especially to rally from what a lot of people have deemed kind of some lean years, you got to hit on guys who are outside of your top picks, and you got to hit on some lower round guys. And Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim appear to be doing that right now with outfielder Michael Hermosillo, who was a 28th round selection in 2013 and has vaulted himself into the conversation among the top prospects in that system, and joins us on this week's edition of the Show Before the Show. Michael, welcome, man. How are you? How's the offseason treating you?
Good. Everything's good. I've just been hanging out, working out, nothing too crazy.
And you get a chance to do it in Arizona. An Arizona native, went to high school in Illinois, graduated from there, drafted by the Angels, and you jump into pro ball in 2013, and over the last couple of years, made a name for yourself as being one of the guys in this system now. And let's start, we'll talk about 2017 first, and then we'll kind of backtrack over the course of your career. But this year, coming off of a breakout 2016, you start the season back in the Cal League, which I think was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. And then after 2 weeks, I think the Angels realized, like, oh yeah, that was probably a surprise to us too. So they jumped you up immediately to Mobile. Yeah. Then you make your way to Salt Lake. You get 3 levels under your belt in 2017. You're on the doorstep of the big leagues. This time 2015, you were getting set to head back to rookie ball in low A, and now all of a sudden you're double A, triple A guy. Take us through 2017 from your perspective.
Yeah, 2017 was definitely crazy. Like you said, I started in high A. Didn't really think that was going to happen. Just pure, just thought process through the off season that, I'd maybe get the chance to start in double A. But took it head on, definitely wasn't disappointed. Went there, hit as best I could while I was there. And like you said, was able to get out of there like 2 weeks in, and I was feeling good, honestly. I was feeling really good, like in the Cal League, and kind of had just started to fall off a little bit when they had called me up. And I think once I got to Mobile, it was just crazy, like kind of the jump in terms of talent, I thought. And I definitely thought I was ready for it, but you just never know. And I kind of went into like a 0 for 40 slump, something ridiculous like that. And I was pretty like mentally like in a low place for a little bit, and then really came out of that after just like talking with some friends and stuff, and teammates, obviously coaches. And you kind of like never looked back from there, kind of made the jump all the way up to like 220, then got it to like 250, 260, 270 in that range, and then dropped back down a little bit, and then got the call out of there just after digging myself out of that hole, and then just kind of try to cap things off in AAA. So it was good. It was a good 2017, and definitely looking to improve on that in 2018.
To get to the end of 2017, I mean, so many guys, you'll get to those last couple weeks of the season, you'll get 5-10 games in AAA, kind of give you a taste and round out a season. But you get up there for the last month. They promoted you on August 3rd, and you got 30 games in AAA, which is a substantial stay. And you bat 287, 828 OPS. I mean, that jump from high A to double A, everybody always talks about as being, the biggest one in terms of talent. But to get to AAA and see guys with big league experience, guys who are going to be in the big leagues at the start of September. What was that like to be able to get that under your belt for a relatively extended period of time?
No, yeah, it was definitely awesome. And there's definitely an adjustment to AAA too. Obviously the pitchers pitch different there, especially in the PCL, where it's definitely a hitters friendly league, but obviously you still have talented pitchers in every team you face. So it's just that, sometimes facing that veteran guy who's more like knows how to pitch guys, or that young prospect that's throwing hard, things like that. So you still have to make your adjustments there too. And like, that's kind of the biggest thing, was that I was happy to finish off strong there, and just having that confidence that I know, if I can hit there, like, I can hit anywhere. So all in all, it was good. And I'm glad, the Angels gave me that chance to get that experience. And also like just getting around, veteran guys like Eric Young Jr., Shane Robinson, guys like that. I mean, that helps too.
And one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on this week is because, after all that you put through, climbing 3 levels, showing yourself at each stop, you get added to the 40-man roster with the Angels. Obviously that's a great opportunity. That means you are on a major league roster, definitely going to be in major league camp come spring. But just kind of walk us through the process of how you hear about that, how much you're thinking about it, because obviously there's a deadline coming up for you. You are Rule 5 eligible. What was that whole process like of being added to this roster, this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely crazy, because I think especially for high school guys, you kind of learn about this one early, just because, especially for high school guys, you're working through the minor leagues for the most part, unless you're like a crazy, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, guy like that. You're working your way through those first 4.5 years anyway. So like Rule 5 is something you always look forward to, obviously, just because it's that like opportunity for you to either get put on a 40-man that the team you're with, or get picked up on someone else's. So it's definitely something you look forward to. And it was definitely something in the back of my head these first 2 months of the off season, just kind of wondering if they would or wouldn't. Cause you never know until like they actually make that call. And then finally got that call on Monday around like 3. I was actually driving home from the grocery store. And Michael Acosta called me, and just basically, it was a short call, but it was just like, congrats on the 40-man. Like, we want you to be a part of our organization, obviously. And it was cool. It was definitely like one of those like accomplishments, one of those goals, like, checked off the list.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the Angels 40-man right now. There are 4 outfielders, or at least 4 listed outfielders on the 40-man roster right now. They're Mike Trout, Justin Upton, Cole Calhoun, and you. How does it feel to be in that group? You're going to be competing with that group. And now officially be amongst them. It's no longer a thought. It's actually on paper, kind of done and dusted.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just think the biggest thing is just believing in yourself. Obviously when you're, on the same field as the best player in the game, you want to obviously take up your level, as best you can, and, match that. And especially Trout, Upton, Cole Calhoun, they're all obviously good established big leaguers. So, just being able to get around them. I actually work out with Cole at the complex right now, Monday through Friday. He's there. So just being around all that, and just like, taking my level up another notch just to try and compete with them. I mean, it's going to be huge. I'm definitely going to use them as motivation, and, kind of feed off them and get as much information from them as possible.
Well, coming out of high school, Michael was a well-regarded football prospect who was committed to play at the University of Illinois, and then all of a sudden the Angels come calling in the draft, and that's such a big decision for so many guys. And it's one thing if you're, top 5 round pick, the money is going to be huge, more than likely you're going to set yourself up, your family up. But for you, 28th round selection, you got a chance to go play Division I football. Take us through that process, that decision-making process where you got a scholarship on one hand, but on the other hand, here's a baseball opportunity. I mean, that I would imagine was an extraordinarily difficult crossroads to come to.
Yeah, no, 100%. Dang, it is a crazy one just because I did love football so much, and it was hard to make that decision at such a young age to like give up one sport. But it pretty much just came down to a couple injuries that I had at the end of the year, my senior year. And then not only that, but I was just gaining a love for baseball like constantly. And I kind of like fell in love with the idea of getting drafted. And then I kind of just set my mind to that pretty much from like March, April on. And I kind of knew if there was pretty much any opportunity, I was going to give it a shot. And I think the thing behind that was obviously the 28th round thing. That's always crazy. Just like, kind of like taking a discount, obviously, to go play like professional baseball in terms of what you think your value is. But I just always, felt like I could compete with the best, especially guys my class. Like I'd been around them and I had, played against them and things like that. And I just knew that if I would have been in a better baseball environment, not really in Illinois where I was so focused on football pretty much for the most part, like I would have been, at that level and had that consideration. So I just kind of trusted in myself and, had my family support and, friends support. And that just pretty much, got me through it. So,
well, and I
think even in 2015, when I got sent down, that was definitely like a point where I was almost thinking about like stopping and like going back to football and just having that 2016 season and then, capping off 2017. Now I'm just like confident as ever in the choice I made.
Well, and that's what's so amazing. So at the start of the 2015 season, Michael heads to Burlington to get your start in the Midwest League, and then in July starts with Orem down in Brookball. So got things started, 79 games in Burlington, and then you take that step back. But then 2015 into 2016, something clicked. And I remember when we talked in spring training last year, you said going into 2016, you kind of felt lost, but then all of a sudden things just started coming together. Now that you're even more removed from that, can you pinpoint what you think it was in 2016? Because you break out, 37 games with Burlington to start things, you OPS 853, 40 games with Inland Empire later on in the season, you OPS 883, and it was just like everything was there.
Yeah. It's such I'll try to keep it like as simple, because it's such a long road, long story, but I just think I held my own for the most part in Burlington that 2015 year. It was pretty much the last 2.5 weeks where I just kind of really fell off and had like a 1 for 20 something streak or something like that. And it brought my average or 1 for 30, something like that. And I had never been through that before. Just like in high school in Illinois, you play like maybe twice a week, 3 times a week if you're lucky. So playing every day and going through that struggle, I had never experienced that before. And I really let it get to me. And I just think I made a mentality adjustment once I got to Orem, just that, I wasn't going to let things affect me as much. And, I was just going to work through things and have confidence all the time. And then basically going into that 2016 year was just really getting after in the off season, really starting to take baseball seriously, like especially on the hitting side mechanically, and not just trusting in ability, like fixing things, like actually going in and focusing on certain things. And just, I also had like a quick meeting with my Gallego when they had just kind of established themselves as like the new, regime, like running the Angels. And he just kind of put a lot of confidence in me, saying that they like trusted in my ability. They know I'm a good player. Like they want to give me the opportunity. Cause I didn't start the year in Burlington that year. I actually started in AZ and extended because I had a shoulder injury. So I just think once I got into that 2016 year, just a combination of all that, and just like having that confidence really, really set me off.
And just to go back to, what you were talking about a little while ago in terms of entering the draft, I know you mentioned some injuries played a role in that, and the way we kind of view football now and seeing how short the career can be there. But what were the Angels trying to do to convince you to play baseball? The risk with taking you wasn't great that high, in the 28th round.
Yeah.
But obviously they wanted you. They used a pick on you. What were those discussions like? What were they telling you?
I think I really bought into 2 scouts that have scouted me. Joel Murray, who was my area scout, and then Larry Corrigan, who was actually he's a major league scout, but he had known someone at my dad's work. I think it was his niece. I don't remember the story, and he actually got out to see me, and he had seen a lot of players, and he, was really impressed with me, and we just kind of sat down and talked, and he was just like, I really, believe in your ability. I'll do as much as I can to convince the Angels to pick you where you want, but even if you can't, like, maybe you should take that opportunity. And I just kind of bought into them, and, they believed in me, my parents believed in me, and it was just kind of like a combination of that, really, I would say. Those two sold me hard on playing baseball.
And as you're kind of proving yourself, within the Angels system, how have you kind of seen the system grow, as it's gone along? I mean, Tyler mentioned, what the public perception was pretty much after Trout and Calhoun kind of graduated. It's starting to build itself up again, specifically in the outfield.
Right.
They drafted Joe Adell, Jahmai Jones is coming along. You're developing well. How has the system itself grown in the last couple of years since you first got in it?
Yeah, I just think we have a lot of athletes. A lot more athletes, a lot of guys who, just like go out there and compete. Like you said, Jahmai Jones, Marsh, Adele, all those like headline guys, Stice, like all of them, they're definitely very impressive. And then I think we have a lot of depth too. I just think there's a lot of guys that maybe people don't know about, that just go out there and compete every day. And it's definitely exciting because you want to be a part of like good teams. You know what I mean? It's just like, it was so fun at the end to play in Salt Lake. We were playing for like an actual playoff berth, and we came up short, but it was fun having all those meaningful games. And I just think it's, having quality players like surrounding everybody is huge.
And one thing I wanted to ask,
I also think it brings a lot of attention to our organization too, because you see so much excitement about like the Dodgers, the Astros, things like that. You want that for your organization as well.
Right. And one of the ways you've kind of proven yourself, and you said there's a lot of athletes, obviously being recruited as a wide receiver, you're pretty athletic yourself, but this last year we talked about your breakout 2016. This year your stolen bases went up. You had 10 stolen bases in 2016. This year 35. Seemed like you were getting more aggressive on the base paths. What went into that? Was that something you decided? Was that something the Angels told you? How'd that kind of work itself out?
I think it was definitely something I decided. I was kind of, I don't know. I feel like I kind of had been underestimated on the bases, and that was just kind of, these last couple of years, I was so focused on figuring out hitting that once I got on base, I didn't even really have any idea what I was doing. And finally, for the first time, kind of feeling like I'd figured out a couple things and being confident with my day-to-day routine, I was able to really focus on base stealing. And it kind of just took off, and I always knew I had it in me. I really that's kind of the one main thing that I was always confident in is my speed. And it just kind of was something I focused on in spring training and just took into the season. And honestly, I feel I'm kind of not disappointed, but I feel like I honestly could have got more. So it's just kind of something that I want to keep getting better at.
Michael, one of the other things everybody raves about with your game is your plate discipline, and especially being somebody that didn't get a chance to play a ton in high school, cold weather state, all that type of stuff like you're talking about, only a couple games a week. I remember last year you said that's something that's just always come pretty naturally to you, which is among the rarest qualities I think that a guy can say you just sort of have always had. But to not only have always had that and utilized it so well early on in your career, making that adjustment from level to level to level across 3 levels in one season has got to be really difficult. How did that play out? I mean, getting used to not only the way umpires are going to call things at different levels, but the ways guys are going to pitch you at different levels and keeping your command of the strike zone as a hitter.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the best things that pieces of advice I ever got was from Soch in spring training, just saying how minor leagues is practice for the big leagues. And I think a lot of things that went into this year in 2017 with play discipline, things like that, things that people say that I'm good at, whatever. I think I was practicing so many things at the plate while on top of advancing levels from AA to AAA, where the pitching is obviously different than it would be in low and high. Pitchers aren't just going to give in. And I just think it was like AA, AAA is where you work on just trusting in yourself, trusting in your plan. I think that's where it really becomes important, just because I feel like this year my strikeouts were higher than they've ever been, and it was just mainly not trusting in what I was doing or changing something at the plate. So I just think the biggest thing coming from like plate discipline is just like practicing it, just like practicing, like sticking to your plan, not giving into the pitchers. If you're down 0-2, you're not panicking and chasing pitches, which I did a lot of, especially in AA and early on in AAA when I figured out, you're not going to get that 3-2 fastball anymore, or even 3-1 fastball. So I think just a multitude of those things, the experience, all that put together is just what's going to, help your play discipline or, keep it going.
Well, Michael, just 22 years old, be 23 at the start of the 2018 season. Last year, your first invitation to big league camp. This year, you're going to be a member of the 40-man, and a 28th round pick, not even 5 years ago, and that number 847th overall. I mean, even knowing that you knew throughout your time being recruited to play football, whatever the next thing was going to be, you always kind of knew, I can hang with these guys in baseball. Now that you're proving it, does that still serve as motivation? The fact that nobody else saw me until the 28th round. This organization believed in me. How much does that still fuel you?
Yeah, definitely to a certain extent. I always had that little bit of fire because of where I was picked, but now I feel like, oh man, that's a tough one. I feel like I'm just getting motivation from myself, just goals that I want to reach. Not really worried about that, the pick anymore, just because I feel like sometimes when I think about that type of stuff, I get caught up in what other people are doing. And the biggest thing that I feel like it's helped me succeed is just focusing on what I can control and what I can do. So I really am just in a constant battle with myself, just to get better in the weight room, get better on the field, get better defensively, get better play discipline, things like that. It's more just trying to compete with myself and just get better that way.
All right, well, that kind of transitions well into the one we'll end you on. In researching you and looking some stuff up, specifically about the draft, I brought up this story from 2013 from the News Tribune, from the Illinois Valley where you're from, and they did this story after you were drafted and after you signed and all that. And I just want to read you the kicker quote. This was published in June 2013. "I'm happy to be an Angel. Hopefully I can be playing next to Mike Trout in 4 to 5 years. I can't wait to get started." So that was 4 to 5 years ago, almost exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're on the 40-man roster. Now you will be playing with Mike Trout in the spring at the least, hopefully in the summer as well. If you could go back in time and talk to that 2013 version of yourself, what would you tell you?
I would just say, oh man, just you're right on point. Just stick to what I'm doing. I always had that mentality. To me, the pick was always a number. And like I said, and we've talked about, I always knew I had it in me, and it was just, that's never changed. It's wavered at times, but deep down, I've always known that, I belong, in this spot, and I'm just going to, continue to, do what I can to just keep achieving goals. That's pretty much it. Definitely, that's crazy. I've never, I don't even know if I read that, to be completely honest, but that's cool.
Well, the internet is a big place.
That's
you can
cool
go
to hear.
It.
Yeah.
Google yourself, I guess, and you'll find it at some point.
2013 Nostradamus, Michael Hermosillo. It's pretty awesome.
Right.
Michael, one of our favorite guys
That's
in the minors,
funny.
and we say this about a certain amount of guys from week to week, but honestly, legitimately, maybe the best minor league baseball Twitter follow at mhermosillo10.
Oh.
I cannot recommend following Michael enough. And
There it is.
Michael, thanks a ton, man. Congrats on all the success so far.
Some people.
For some people, yeah, I guess that's true.
For some people, that might be irrelevant.
Might not be the same cup of tea, depending on our listenership.
Yeah.
Michael, congrats on all the success, man, and enjoy the rest of the offseason and spring training, and we'll see you in big league camp come February.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
We're in one of the very last cones of silence of the Major League and Minor League offseason prior to the winter meetings coming out of the Thanksgiving break. And so before things explode into craziness for one Benjamin Hill, we welcome him back into the fold on the Show Before the Show podcast. Hi, Ben. How was Thanksgiving?
Hey, Thanksgiving was great. And, I was on vacation before that. I went to Pittsburgh. I went to San Francisco, saw family and friends over Thanksgiving. I was out of the office for 17 days. I don't even know if that's legal in some states to be
and
out
here
of
you are admitting it on the
yeah
podcast.
to be out of an office for that long. It's certainly anti-American, but I did it, and I'm back. And you're right, it's still a little slow, but next week we've got some team name and logo unveiling.
Next week already.
I would say multiple instances. Stay tuned.
Wow. It's got to get out there for the Christmas rush.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some of that finally. It's been a little slow on that front this year. Usually in November, by this point we've had 2 or 3, but got a couple coming next week, and then the winter meetings, and then a little bit's quiet again, and then it'll be busier in the new year in 2018. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are. But that's okay, because when we get to this point in the offseason, sometimes that's all we look forward to are the things that are coming up in the season. But that's still a little ways off. And with that, we'll talk about some things that are timeless. And Ben's got a story up on the blog right now, which is actually one of my favorite pieces of the offseason so far. It's just kind of a run-through of ballparks that Ben has been to that are no longer part of the minor leagues. Teams moved, or teams, changed affiliations. They were bought by new ownership groups and they left the city, or they got a new ballpark in the city, whatever it is. But 13, an unlucky 13 of ballparks that Ben has seen that are now no longer in the minor league landscape. This is really cool. 2 of them stood out to me especially because of things that you linked to in the story that gave kind of a look at what things are like nowadays. One of them, I believe, was Joe Davis Stadium in Huntsville, but the other one was Greer Stadium in Nashville, and you linked to a story about what the plan is right now to redevelop that area that's currently being held up in the courts. But there are pictures of Greer Stadium now, and it looks like a set that you would use for The Walking Dead if you were going to be shooting it in Nashville. It's all overgrown. Windows are all blown out of the press box. There's graffiti all over the outfield walls. The big guitar scoreboard is still there, but it's dark. It's fascinating, these pictures.
Yeah. Of the 13 stadiums I've visited that are no longer in the world of MILB, I'd say Nashville's Greer Stadium, which was the home of the Sounds through 2014, it had definitely seen better days, even, through the Sounds last couple of seasons. And now that it's not being taken care of, it is deteriorated at a fast and furious rate. So I don't know what the future is there, but I don't think there's going to be any further sports or, certainly minor league baseball there. That's certainly for sure. But a lot of those stadiums are hosting, independent teams. Some are collegiate teams and things of that nature. Most have found second and third lives since the minor league team departed, for sure.
And as you were putting this list together, 13 parks, it's pretty hefty. Were there any of them that you kind of had pangs of nostalgia for? Or there's reasons why all of these teams moved, right? Whether, like Tyler mentioned, it's building a new stadium in the same city or going to a new stadium in a new city, what have you. But when you were doing this, was there anything you're like, I wish I could go there one more time to watch a game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, some nostalgia for all of them, because even if a stadium, was well past its shelf life in terms of hosting a minor league team, I'm just glad I got to be there and take it in. And so a little bit of nostalgia for everywhere. I'd say the one I have the most nostalgia for, I was only there one time, would be Sam Lynn Ballpark in Bakersfield, home of the Blaze. And the thing with Sam Lynn was that of all the 13 parks I visited that are no longer with us, Sam Lynn was probably the poster child for a ballpark that should no longer be hosting minor league baseball. It was built 70-some years ago. It was in pretty rough physical condition. Minor league baseball had been granting waivers or variances to allow it to continue hosting a minor league team, even though it wasn't quite up to snuff in a lot of ways. Obviously, the condition of that ballpark is a big reason why 2 teams were contracted from the California League along with High Desert and went over to the Carolina League. But the sun set in your eyes. They would have sun delays at the beginning of the day because the stadium was built facing the sun. But the front office there, who I got to know a little bit, really loved it and sort of had a chip on the shoulder and an underdog mentality, but sort of liked operating in such a challenging place. The fans who showed up, and you find this at all the struggling ballparks, the fans who show up are like the best kind of fans because they're no Johnny-come-latelys. They're the cranks and the eccentrics and the ones who keep coming out even when when the atmosphere is maybe leaving a little to be desired, and then they create their own weird atmosphere. So there was just a strangeness to that place that I really liked, and as much as I certainly understood from a practical standpoint that minor league baseball had to go. That's the one I wish I could go back to. And I know there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way.
Ben is now at 155 of the 159 minor league ballparks that are currently in use. It was 156, but Augusta is scheduled to move into a new ballpark coming up this spring, so it's dropped down to 155. So obviously that's one of the now 4 remaining. What are the other ones that you haven't been to?
Yeah, so heading into 2018, the 4 stadiums that will be operational in 2018 that I've not been to are the new ballpark in Augusta, as you mentioned, the Florida Fire Frogs, who play in a town that I'll never quite pronounce correctly, Kissimmee. Kissimmee, Sam.
Yeah, I've been to that ballpark.
Kissimmee.
I've been there when the Houston Astros had their spring training park there.
Right, and they're playing in a spring training facility that is no longer used for spring training, but it now hosts that team. So I need to get to see the Florida Fire Frogs, the Augusta Green Jackets, as I mentioned, and the 2 teams in Colorado, the Grand Junction Rockies and the Colorado Springs Sky Sox.
Oh, what a surprise. There are 2 teams in the state where I live that you have avoided. Out of the 4 teams that you have not been to, what a shocker.
Yeah, it was totally intentional. I don't want to go to the mountain time zone, or as I call it, the Tyler Mountain time zone. It is it was. I meant to get it into my Pioneer League trip this year. My original plan for that trip was all 8 teams in the Pioneer League, as well as Grand Junction, as well as Colorado Springs and Salt Lake. I just couldn't get an itinerary to work, so I just cut out Grand Junction and Colorado Springs, the Colorado portion. But I do want to get there. 2018, is a significant year for the Colorado Springs Sky Sox, as it will be their last season as a AAA team. And then they will go all the way down to rookie ball in 2019, as part of a interlocking series of moves that we've discussed in the past. And you can look it up or email me if you want me to get into it, but it takes a long time to explain these things. But yes, Colorado Springs, Grand Junction, the Florida Fire Frogs, and the Augusta Green Jackets, all I got left. I keep delaying this total reassessment of my life until I've been everywhere. And that's the great thing about minor league baseball. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time you think you got it, like a new one pops up, and you're like, duh, and you want to smash that new one. I mean, you want to visit it, you want to love it, but you know what? You know what I mean.
For the purposes of this analogy, well, one thing that stands out about this too, obviously we mentioned Augusta, but Lake Olmsted Park opened in 1994, and some of these parks, some of them, Sam Lynn's been there forever, Rosenblatt was there forever as well, but some of these, by modern structure standards, weren't that old, and yet they became old very quickly and are being replaced by even newer things. As parks are being built now, do you feel like they're doing anything to make sure they're irreplaceable, or is there anything changing about design of parks, anything consideration of parks to make them last longer than just 20 years in their kind of cycles?
I think it's a case-by-case basis. I do think that places like Lake Olmsted and Augusta, places like New Britain Stadium, which hosted the Rock Cats, were stadiums that were not very old, but I think were built, on the cheap by minor league baseball standards, and didn't have the amenities that people come to expect with to make minor league baseball games truly social outings with, a lot of room to move, the 360-degree concourses, group areas, video boards, that kind of thing. So I think the stadiums that, even if they're only 20 years old, by no means am I saying that teams should leave stadiums that are 20, 25 years old if they immediately don't suit their needs. There's a lot of factors that play there. But I do think that newer stadiums generally are built a little bit more for the long haul than you will see from some of the stadiums built in the 90s. But, I think that every time a new stadium opens and, it's just bright and new and shining, it just seems like, man, this place is going to be here forever. And I think to myself, okay, if a ballpark opened in, let's say, 2017, are we going to be talking in like 2040 about a new ballpark? And maybe. And it's strange to think that how new things become old very quickly. That applies to all of us. It's a metaphor.
That's true. One of my favorite things from this blog post, I clicked through to Ben's post from 2011 when he visited, and it's probably the perfect example of this, but Adelanto Stadium in California, which hosted the High Desert Mavericks. At the time Ben went there, it was a Stater Brothers Stadium. The Mavericks, of course, moving after 2016. But High Desert, I remember when they announced that move, on one of those rabbit holes that you fall down researching things from minor league baseball, I remember finding a story from the Los Angeles Times from when that stadium opened in the mid 1990s. I think in 1994 was its first season. It was a state of the art, brand new facility, and this area of California is booming, and this is going to be a crown jewel of the minor leagues. And by the time Ben got there, this is a quote. There is a photo of the box office, a now abandoned box office, that has a handwritten sign that says box office with an arrow pointing to another box office. Then this is a quote from that piece that Ben posted in 2011. Immediately to the right of this is a bulletin board displaying flyers for a pair of concerts that took place in 2002. And this was in 2011 that Ben visited, helping to solidify the impression that this is the land that time forgot. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I believe that stadium opened in 1991. As you said, a crown jewel. And 20 years later, it was, just weather worn and beaten down and really low attendance. I remember they had on some of the pillars on the concourse for years. They would write the opening day lineups on the concourse pillars. And the 1991 opening day lineup on the stadium pillar, on the concourse pillar, was just, the paint was peeled and cracked, and if you just glanced at it, you would have thought that was an opening day lineup from like 1948 or something like that. And it was like, wait, this was 1991? This wasn't even that long ago. But the economy, was hurt really bad in that area. A big loss of jobs. I believe there was a medical or
an Air Force base.
An Air Force base that closed, and so the city of Adelanto went into tough times. The demographics changed. Just some negative factors were at work. But of all the stadiums I visited, that was certainly sort of the most harrowing. I don't want to be that dramatic, but it was the most striking in terms of how much the fortunes had changed in such a short amount of time.
Well, that blog post is up at bensbiz.mlblogs.com right now. And speaking of ballparks and teams moving and changing directions, all that kind of stuff, we had a really interesting story pop up this week in which the Laredo, Texas City Council voted unanimously on a proposal to bring baseball back to the city of Laredo in the form of a Mexican League team that will occupy Unitrade Stadium for at least some of its home games in 2018. It's the team formerly the Red Eagles of Veracruz, Rojos del Águila de Veracruz, which are moving. They'll split time. Their home ballparks will be two, Nuevo Laredo and Laredo, Texas. They'll share a home facility. This is interesting because oftentimes we hear discussions about Major League Baseball expansion. Could it be Montreal? Could it be Mexico City? Where are they looking outside the United States? We don't often think about it in reverse of a Mexican League team coming over to this side, which is kind of interesting and cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So this team, I believe it's the Tecolotes. My Spanish is really not good, but it means owls in Spanish. The Tecolotes. Please, someone tweet at me or call me and tell me how to pronounce owls in Spanish. But this team in Laredo, it was approved to move from Veracruz after the 2017 season to Nuevo Laredo in Mexico, and then shortly after that move was announced, then a new deal was announced that said not only will this team play in Nuevo Laredo, they will now play across the Rio Grande River in Laredo, Texas. So now you have a Mexican League team playing it's the Tecolotes dos Laredos, the Owls of the two Laredos, that will split its time between Nuevo Laredo in Mexico and Laredo, Texas. And that's really cool to think now that there's Mexican baseball on American soil. And obviously there's a world of similarities between the two Laredos. I mean, they're sister cities. They're essentially almost connected with one another. And there is precedent for this. Nuevo Laredo had a baseball team also named the Tecolotes that in the 80s did the same thing, split time between Nuevo Laredo and Laredo, and did the same thing in the 80s. So there is precedent for this. The city lost its baseball team, I believe, after the 2003 season, and now it's great to see it coming back and this really unique arrangement between a Mexican League team and the two cities in two different countries.
And I mean, I'm sure you don't have the answers yet, but what are you kind of looking at in terms of how they're going to what is the Mexican League experience going to be like on American soil? Are they going to be doing bilingual announcements, or what are your kind of expectations for?
I don't know what to expect, and this announcement is fresh. I'm going to be writing about it in a batting around column that'll be up tomorrow on Thursday when this podcast appears as well. But certainly, as we get closer to the season, the Mexican League season begins. They haven't announced the 2018 schedule, but it's going to begin very late March, early April. So I will certainly, once we get a little closer to the season and things are a little more established there, I want to check in with the team and see how they're operating. In doing a little research today about all this, I learned that Laredo, Texas is actually one of the least ethnically diverse cities in the country. It's something like 96% Hispanic, and Mexican, obviously, making up almost all of that because it's so close to Mexico. So if you have a population, in the United States or not, that is so already Spanish speaking and already of Mexican descent, I don't see probably a huge difference between the way the game is presented in Texas versus Mexico, given the proximity between the two places, and that almost surely, I'm sure, in a lot of cases, a lot of the front office staff will be involved, in putting on the show in both places. I really, of course, do not expect them to have two parallel front offices that do their own separate thing depending on what country they're in. I imagine this will be a fluid operation and fairly similar no matter where the team is playing. I could be wrong, and stay tuned. I will write about this in the future.
Right. I want to make it clear. I'm not expecting it because you're on American soil, you speak English. I'm just fascinated.
Yeah, it's interesting, and
I have not seen anything quite like this. At least in my time in the minors.
No, I hadn't either, and I'm not sure if there's a precedent for it beyond the fact that Laredo and Nuevo Laredo had done it in the past. I'm not sure if other Mexican cities and American cities have done this arrangement, and I'm intrigued by it. And yeah, it puts one more team on American soil, which is I don't want to take teams from Mexico or anything like that, but it's cool to have one more team in Texas while also not losing its presence in Mexico either. That's a cool thing.
Like 2 teams in Niagara Falls or something. Trying to think of something we could do with Canada, an international league team. I guess Can-Am is too easy, but something like that. They play one side of the border one day, one side of the border.
I like that. Let's start a border league where every team has 2 ballparks on in 2 different countries.
There we go. And then you got your home record, your other home record, and your away record.
There you go.
Right, and the World Series in this league is the teams with the best. Never mind. We need to think about this.
Yeah, we'll got to storyboard this idea. Well, and it should provide a little more stability for Unitrade Stadium and the community of Laredo, Texas. They did have an independent league team there, the Laredo Lemurs of the American Association. That ballpark only opened in 2012, and it looks really, really cool. But in the most kind of indie league thing ever, the Laredo Lemurs website still exists. And at the end of 2016, there's a graphic that says, "See you next season." And they just folded up shop and never came back. So a little bit more stability maybe for the city of Laredo and for a ballpark that looks really, really cool. And if you find yourself in that area, guess what? You can check out some really fun baseball. Mexican League baseball is really, really cool. I got to go to a game, the Tigres de Quintana Roo, 5 years ago, and it's a really, really fun atmosphere. And moving along, final thing on the docket for this week, which actually ties into our first topic. Back in 2009, Ben visited Joe Davis Stadium in Huntsville, Alabama, which was the home of the Huntsville Stars from 1984 to 2015. There is a discussion now. The Huntsville Stars then moved in 2015 to Biloxi, Mississippi, where they became the Shuckers. Now there is discussion that maybe Huntsville is going to be back in the mix in the Southern League. The Mobile Bay Bears have been purchased. The new ownership group there wants to move the team to the Huntsville area. What's the latest on this? And is there a possibility that Joe Davis Stadium comes back into play, Ben?
To answer that last question first, no. There is no way Joe Davis Stadium, or no way. I've been wrong before. But one of the reasons the Huntsville Stars, or not one of the reasons, the reason the Huntsville Stars left Huntsville was because Joe Davis Stadium was pretty dilapidated and the team was really struggling to draw there. So they went to Biloxi. But all along, ever since the Stars moved, there's been other baseball owners looking at that market and saying, if they can play in a new stadium in that market, with the aerospace industry and good demographics for minor league baseball, the Stars leaving wasn't so much a reflection of Huntsville as a whole as it was about the stadium they played in. So now that the Mobile Bay Bears have been purchased, and Mobile, not coincidentally, is the worst drawing team in the Southern League, that team was purchased with the intent of trying to relocate them to Huntsville. Not technically Huntsville, it's Madison, Alabama, in the greater Huntsville region in North Alabama. But that is the process that is taking place now. The sale of the Mobile Bay Bears to an entity called Ballcore was announced on November 7th. The very next day, the city of Madison put out a press release saying they were exploring the possibilities of building a multi-use venue, with obviously a minor league baseball team being one of the tenants. And that minor league baseball team would, of course, be the relocated Mobile Bay Bears. So that process is going to continue to play out. Obviously, the Bay Bears are not going anywhere in 2018 and probably not 2019 either. Who knows? But it looks like their time may be running out, as the process is greatly accelerating to relocate them to Madison and to put baseball back in the Huntsville market.
He is Benjamin Hill. It's a good thing you got your vacation in, because everything blows up for Ben coming up over the next couple of weeks. So while all of you will be gearing up for Christmas, Ben will be bringing you all the coolest, latest news from Major League Baseball, minor league baseball, the winter meetings, rebranding season, all that kind of stuff. And good luck, man. Enjoy it. This is a fun time of year for you, I would assume.
Yeah, it is a fun time of year, and that's my Christmas or holiday gifts to all of you, all the great content that I bring. Happy holidays, everyone, and enjoy the content. Hashtag content.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Well, now we got to get out of this episode without screwing it up, because it's been good at this point. So it's my biggest fear.
That was good. Yeah. Well, one thing I will say, one thing that's kind of flooding the news this week in baseball is Shohei Ohtani has asked for applications from people, basically surveys, like, how are you going to recruit me to your major league organization? So Tyler, what should we do to get Shohei Ohtani to, like, not play baseball and just join the minor league baseball podcast?
Oh, man. Well, he wouldn't have to leave home to do it. I mean, we already do it remotely. You're in New York. I'm in Denver, so he could stay at home. Sure. We might have to maneuver our hours around, because I can't imagine it's the easiest. I don't even know what time it is in Tokyo right now, but I think it's like 8 a.m. So we would have started recording maybe a little early if he's not, exactly a morning person.
We can be flexible.
It's 7:45 a.m. there right now, so we would have started recording at 6 a.m. But yeah, we can be flexible. We can move it back if he wants to do it late mornings. We can move it up if he wants to do it overnights. Whatever works for him. I bet we could probably get him a Ben's Biz t-shirt. We haven't gotten them yet because we're not cool enough, but we could probably swing one for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we'll find one in his size. And,
yeah.
We will not limit his role. We can say that.
That's true. That's true.
Some teams are deciding whether they only want him to be a pitcher or they're going to allow him to be a pitcher and a hitter. He can have as many roles as he wants with us. That's point one. Point two, we have no restrictions on our international signing.
That is true. We are not held back. We weren't hit with any of the luxury tax, the penalty for overspending on bonuses. We don't have any of that.
We don't have any of that. We don't actually have like $5 million to spend, but we don't have penalties.
Right, but you're not supposed to say
on our
that
spending.
while we're doing
But
this,
he doesn't
Sam.
know that.
Well, now he does. You just said so.
Oh, that's true.
Well, there it goes.
Shohei, don't listen to the last.
We were all lined up.
Back.
We were all lined up to sign Shohei Ohtani to the podcast, and now nothing. Now we got to go back and try to restructure an extension with Ben. Unbelievable. Come to play for us, Shohei Ohtani. Come to play for the Minor League Baseball podcast. It'll be very fun. We'll make it worth your while.
Yeah, that's all. That's all we need to say. I think we've proven ourselves.
Exactly. That's it. That works for me. Well, I'm really excited for the next few weeks because once we get into redesign, rebranding season, it's one of my favorite times of the year. So that'll be a bunch of fun. We'll have that coming up with Benjamin Hill. Big thanks to Ben. You can find all his stuff at the blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com, as well as on Twitter. He is at bensbiz. Michael Hermosillo, again, is on Twitter at mhermosillo10. And a big thanks to Michael for joining us. And that'll do it for this week's edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Mon. We'll talk to you next week.